Hi everybody. For our CNIT 370 project, Kyle, Alex, Weber, and we decided to cover the WPA3 Dragon Blood vulnerabilities. We'll begin with a demo of one of the shortfalls of pre-WPA3 Wi-Fi security protocols, which WPA3 addresses and fixes. Hi guys, my name is David, and I'll be going over an attack on how to capture a WPA2 handshake, and then how to run a dictionary attack against that handshake to crack the passcode used for your WPA2 network. So one of the greatest weaknesses of WPA2 and all previous iterations of wireless security protocols is the ability for an attacker to perform one of these offline attacks. It's bad because they can just go to wherever your access point is, capture a handshake, and then take that handshake back to their layer or whatever, where they have a couple graphics cards that can then chug millions and millions of different combinations at it until it breaks. And this is not ideal. And WPA3, which we will be talking about later, actually prevents this type of vulnerability. So it's a great upgrade. So first, we're going to want to find the BSSID of the station that we want to attack. So I'm going to run an arrow dump and then put in my wireless interface card here to find the BSSID. We're actually looking forward to attack the Charlotte Hornets Rock network, which is right here. And we have the BSSID there, so I can stop capturing. And for those who don't know, Charlotte Hornets, they're an NBA team for North Carolina, Charlotte, North Carolina. So it looks like our victim really likes the NBA. Okay, now that we have our BSSID, I'm going to copy it. And then we're going to run arrow dump again, but this time we're going to add some filters so that we're not capturing all wireless traffic. We can focus on this network so we don't miss out on any packets. So I'm going to specify the BSSID. I'm going to specify the channel, which is channel 6, as you can see here. And we're going to write all the contents to a file called Hornets. Okay, so right now we're beginning to capture all the packets that are going on this network. What we are interested in is this number, which shows the number of handshakes that we have been able to capture. So in order to capture a handshake, a client needs to authenticate and associate with this network. So I'm going to use my phone and connect to this network real quick. Let me type in the password. Okay, and there we go. We can see that the number of handshakes has increased, and we can see that my phone has connected to it. Also another laptop. But what we need are the handshakes, and that is what we have got. So we can stop this capture, take a look at our directory, and you can see the Hornets capture file, which is what we need, which is what has the handshake, and which is what we will be running our dictionary attack against. Okay. So also in this directory, you see a rocku.txt. Rocku is a popular database of sorts, a long list of passwords that have been exposed and compromised in the past. So think like the Ashley Madison hack. People put all those passwords that they ended up being able to crack, and they combine them all so that researchers and malicious actors can use these lists to try to crack passwords. If we take a look at Rocku, it's just line after line after line of different passwords that people have used in the past. And this particular one is actually a smaller version of Rocku. The real Rocku has about 15 million different passwords. This one only has 100,000 because I'm doing this demo inside of a VM, which doesn't have much power, but 100,000 is plenty for our example. Okay, so now that you know our dictionary that we're going to be using, and now that we have our capture file, we can begin to crack the hash. So to do that, we're going to run an aircrack-ng. I'm going to specify the capture file, and we're going to specify our word list, which is going to be Rocky. And once we run this, we'll begin to try all of these different passwords to see if one of them makes our handshake successful. And you can run this in the background when you're at home. You don't need to be near the access point at all, which is an offline dictionary tag by definition. Okay, here my computer is beginning to try all the different passwords. We can see it's tried 40,000 already. It has about 500,000 different keys to test here. Use the percentage sign, and then you can see all the different passwords it's trying. We'll give this a second to run, and hopefully we'll be able to find the passphrase. I'll put on some 2000s tutorial music while we wait. Shouldn't be much longer. Okay. And it looks like we have found our key, which is NBA Forever. Kind of makes sense, Charlotte Hornets, the NBA. So, yeah, this is the key to your WPA2 network. It's the key to the kingdom, Now that an attacker knows this, he can associate with your network. So let's try doing that. Select a network. If it will show up, and then we can try the key. Let's see. I am sharing a Wi-Fi card, but it should be able to show up. Well, nonetheless, this is the password for the network. Now that you have this password, you can log on. You can then try connecting with the gateway, see what type of router it is, see what type of firmware it's running, if there are any vulnerabilities, and continue your attack from there. All this to say, we tried about 352,000 different combinations in 54 seconds in a VM with no GPU. So it is very powerful, and there are a lot of. It's a big threat, especially if you use a simple password that is in a dictionary.
So, this is something that not everyone in IT is completely aware of, but there are two fundamentally different versions of WPA, a personal and an enterprise variant. The personal variant, something you see very commonly as your typical home Wi-Fi, it's password protected with a pre-shared key. In WPA2, that pre-shared key, it had to be literally shared with the person attempting to connect. That key could then be used to authenticate the user, and it would also be used to encrypt the traffic being used in that session using CCNP, or counter mode blockchaining. And in WPA3, pre-shared keys, they're still optional like they were in WPA2. In WPA2, you could forgo setting a password in your Wi-Fi network, and it would take out the authentication piece, but it would also take out the encryption piece. Therefore, if you forego setting up a password on your Wi-Fi network, it would be a completely open network with no encryption. In WPA3, that is not the case. Also coming to WPA3 Personal is support for Wi-Fi Easy Connect. This is a feature mainly for IoT devices, but the idea is that in your box with your IoT device that came in, there's going to be a QR code, and with your phone that's connected to the WPA3 network, you would take a picture of that QR code, and it would automatically add your IoT device. You wouldn't need to put in the password, which is a very common issue with IoT devices today. They don't have the ability to put in passwords, and you have to use a completely open network with them. So on the other hand, WPA3 Enterprise also introduced some improvements, but they were a lot more minor than WPA2 Personal, or WPA3 Personal. The core ideas still remain the same on the enterprise side between WPA2 and WPA3. It's still considered best practice to be using 802.1x with some sort of extensible authentication protocol, EAP, alongside WPA. But they did add some new encryption options such as 256-bit GCMP and 384-bit HMAC and secure HMAC, as well as they are requiring protected management frames in WPA3 Enterprise. And as one final note here, there will be options on all major vendors to support both WPA2 and WPA3 on the same SSID, just for kind of a transition period until WPA3 becomes the de facto standard. However, in our presentation, which is over the Dragon Blood vulnerabilities, which are specific to WPA3 Personal. WPA3 Personal is all about this feature called Simultaneous Authentication of Equals, or SAE. SAE is also known as the Dragonfly handshake. Its purpose is to overcome the issues of WPA2's handshake method. And it's also going to implement perfect forward secrecy. If you recall, that essentially means that the key should be changing frequently enough that even if the key becomes compromised, there would only be a small amount of data that could be decrypted with the compromised key. And the last goal is to prevent offline dictionary attacks, similar to how David had previously demonstrated. So how does SAE actually work? Well, WPA3 Personal, it still uses a pre-shared key as a password, but now it's not going to actually send that password or hash over the air at all. They call that zero knowledge proof, so you can prove you know what the password was without actually telling the access point what the password was. So that probably sounds pretty familiar to all after taking this class. That's a type of public key infrastructure system, which is what SAE is. However, it has some options on how you can approach it based on client and access point compatibility. A cryptographic group has to be agreed upon between the station and the client, and it can use elliptic curve cryptography, which is not something that we've learned about in this class. It's something that we still have a fair amount of research to do for our project, but as we understand it, the access point and the user, they're going to select a point on the same, predefined elliptic curve, and they're going to use that in a prime number to build a pre-shared key and exchange it using a special version of Diffie-Hellman called ECDH. And then on the other hand, you can also use MODP Diffie-Hellman for more traditional approach. So looking into the future of wireless security, I think it's safe to say that WPA3 Personal will soon become the standard for wireless security in household and small business unmanaged Wi-Fi networks. The main reason for this is the higher security that SAE offers in securing the authentication of a user. This will also be impacted by the fact that the Wi-Fi Alliance is requiring new wireless NICs to support WPA3 in order to get certified, which is very important for the companies making the NICs to be selling them. They have to be certified. And that started in July 1st that they were requiring WPA3 support. And WPA3 Enterprise becoming popular is probably still a ways off. There isn't too many improvements that have been made to it. 802.1x in WPA2 is still a very secure system. Network engineers will probably not want to switch to WPA3 until bugs get worked out and among all the major vendors.
So, what is a Dragon Blood vulnerability? Dragon Blood isn't one vulnerability, but 5 design flaws that fall into 2 categories: downgrade attack against WPA3 capable device and a weakness in WPA SAE-Dragonfly handshake. A downgrade and a dictionary flaw that exploit the backwards compatibility of WPA3 the attacker can create a row attack, force WPA client to connect via WPA2, then launch a brute force or dictionary attack against the partial WPA handshake. Another design flaw is the security group downgrade flaw, that in the Dragonfly handshake where client can be forced to choose a weak security group. Another flaw is that it allows hacker to forge commit frames and launch DDoS attack, or a timing-based a side channel flaw that allow dictionary attack on access point that support optional multi-collaborative security group module prime, which is MODP groups. Or a cache-based side channel attack can be launched if a hacker has control of any application on user device, and may even be possible when administrator control JavaScript code in the victim browser. In this attack, victim can recover password information by observing the memory accessing pattern. As I give the definition of the Dragon Blood attack, I mean, the target are mostly those who allow a side channel collection of data by attacking software that has been installed on the device, and those that use specific unsuitable cryptographic elements as part of the hashing process. This attack, the method of this attack comes part allows the legacy WPA2 device to attach a WPA3 enable access point. The resulting downgrade operation, as I kind of talk about, opens up the process to a brute force dictionary attack on password using for authentication. The goal where the hacker can achieve by launching attacks through this vulnerability is that the hacker can use it to collect sensitive information such as email, password, chat message, credit card, and use it to perform harmful actions such as selling your online identity, and selling your personal info, or just selling on the black market for other people to use in their own hands. So how do we protect from Dragon Blood? I mean, so right now the most fixed are fixed with the software patches. The latest security updates from wireless device manufacturer can fix this method, and not only that, enforce a strong password on the network also do help to prevent this happening.
Moving on from that, I am going to talk about the specific vulnerabilities and exploits that make up the Dragon Blood attack. As previously mentioned, Dragon Blood is not just one exploit. It's a bit of a misnomer to just call it an exploit. Rather, it is a group of exploits that target the Dragonfly key exchange, or as it is more readily known in Wi-Fi circles, the simultaneous authentication of equals. The Dragonfly key exchange is used in both WPA3 and EAP password, and EAP is the extensible authentication protocol, which is used for the most part in enterprise Wi-Fi networks. There are many different types of EAP, with EAP password being just one variant. The list of the common vulnerability and exposure IDs that are affected by Dragon Blood exploits are shown in a table to the right there, with their common vulnerability scoring system score to the side of them. And most of these exploits really focus on two processes, the host APD process and the WPA supplicant process. Host APD is a daemon for access point and authentication servers that is used in WPA3's authentication, and the WPA supplicant is a wireless supplicant that implements key negotiation with WPA authenticator and supports WPA3. In case you didn't know, wireless supplicants are the programs or processes that run on your computer or device that make login requests to wireless networks. Moving on to the first CVE number, CVE 2019-9494. It is composed of a side channel attack, and if you didn't know what a side channel attack is an attack that looks at information but isn't directly related to what is being attacked. Rather, it looks at other data or information that may be present when something is happening. Example of this is measuring EMF levels of a monitor or hard drive, like before it's encrypted or something like that, or how much power a device is pulling when it is doing a certain task. This exploit affects the implementation of simultaneous of equals in both host APD and WPA supplicant, and is consisted of both a timing-based attack and a cache access pattern-based attack. And the leaked information from both of these can be used to create a full password recovery. The next exploit is also, or the next exploit, CVE 2019-9495, is also a side channel attack. This time, it affects the implementation of EAP password in both host APD and the WPA supplicant processes, and this time it is only a cache access pattern-based attack. The memory access patterns are shown in a shared cache somewhere on the device, which allow this attack to be possible. Also, in order to do this attack, you're required to both be able to install and execute applications on the device, and this exploit is only able to possibly crack weak passwords, hence the relatively low score that it was given. The next exploit is a process termination and kind of denial of service attack. In case you didn't know, the goal of a denial of services attack is to deny you access to a service, hence its name. It normally does this by disrupting the normal functions of something in a way that prevents users from accessing it, therefore denying them that service. This exploit specifically creates an invalid authentication sequence, which is caused by missing state validation steps, and it affects all versions of host APD that support the simultaneous authentication of equals. The attacker may also force the host APD process to terminate, which is where the denial of service portion of this exploit can come into play, although it is not required for this exploit. The next exploit, CVE 2019-9497, is a reflection attack, and a reflection attack, when discussing authentication protocols at least, is an attack where you try to get the target to give you the answer to its own challenge. It is mostly used on systems that use the same protocol in both directions, so you can essentially go query it with one device, create another, and while it's asking you to go confirm who you are, create another query with another device and somehow get it to go give you an answer and then feed it back, and then all of a sudden you're authenticated. This affects the implementation of EAP password in the host APD EAP server and the WPA supplicant EAP peer. And this may allow the attacker to complete the EAP password authentication without the password being needed, but it does not show the attacker the session key or complete the key exchange for the attacker. The next exploit, CVE 2019-9498, is something that I would consider a data integrity attack, which I'm not 100% sure if this is a category. I just kind of named it that. But I'm referring to all attacks where validation of data is missing in some way, shape, or form. This exploit affects the implementation of EAP password in the host APD EAP server, and is caused by a crypto library not explicitly validating scalar and element values in EAP password commit. This can be used to complete the EAP password authentication, gaining access to the session key, and network access without needing the password at all. And finally, the last exploit I will be looking at, the CVE 2019-9499 exploit, is once again what I would consider a data integrity attack, and affects the implementation of EAP password in the WPA supplicant EAP peer. This is once again caused by a crypto library not explicitly validating scalar and element values in EAP password commit, and can be used to complete the EAP password authentication, gaining the session key, and it can control the data connection with the client, which is where it differs from the last one slightly.